اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أكلك وقاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق وهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره مقداره العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. الحمد لله رب العالمين. أفضل الصلاة وتم تسليما على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ورضي الله تعالى عن هذا السادات التابعين وعلماء عاملين وأئمة أربعين مجتهدين مقلديهم إلا يوم الدين. أما بعد. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. This is the Soullutionz podcast, Soullutionz podcast, discussion is on the revival of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah, and I am one of the hosts, Imam Muhammad Abdullah Ameen. I'm waiting on the other two hosts to come on. They'll be joining us shortly, and the other three hosts to come on, they'll be joining us shortly. One of the hosts is doing a live currently at this time. We got one of the special guests, Abu Isa, waiting on the other special guest to come on. Muhammad Jomo Williams. Oh, he said he's gonna be a little late, inshallah, but we come on. So we inshallah, we're gonna get started. I wanted to like set a primer. All right, since we're gonna be discussing Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah, the revival of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah. We when you're dealing with revival, tajdeed, then that means that there's something happening in the world and society that is prone for tajdeed, for the light of tajdeed to be sparked. And when the light of tajdeed is sparked, that means that they're either one mujaddid or two mujaddids or three that may be present in the world that light the spark of tajdeed in the areas that they're living in. Apparently, one of the lights of tajdeed is primed to be lit here in America, on the shores of North America, Canada, Mexico, South America, and the like. And Allah, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it said at the height of every 100 years that there will be a mujaddid that will revive, bring the religion back to its pristine purity. And in certain times of in history, there were numerous occasions where there was more than one mujaddid that was reviving the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and reviving Islam. One of the proofs for it can possibly be more than one mujaddid that revived the deen back to its pristine purity is the fact that when Imam Mahdi alayhi salam comes on the scene, he will be a mujaddid, and then when Isa ibn Maryam descends, he will also be a mujaddid as well. So it'll be two mujaddids existing at the same time, but in this particular instance, they'll be working together. So I want to give the floor to Abu Isa. Introduce yourself, tell a little bit about yourself, and so I'm gonna ask some questions. I want to say the questions for one of the other hosts. I'm gonna just ask a few questions related to the topic of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah. So you can go ahead, Abu Isa. I'll mute you.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله
وعليكم
الرحمن
السلام
الرحيم.
ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. As the noble Imam Abu Muhammad As he said, my name is Abu Isa Gooding. Um, I don't know what to say about myself. Ain't nobody important, inshallah. Uh, so we're here tonight to talk about, inshallah ta'ala, Ahlus Sunnah, which we know historically, traditionally, has always been consisting, let's say, for the majority of Islamic history, has been three. Has been three. You have the Hanabila, you have the Ash'ara, and you have the Maturidiyya. That's in Creed. Then you have the four schools of fiqh. That's Ahlus Sunnah. Outside of these, you don't find Ahlus Sunnah. You don't find the Sharia, as a matter of fact. So, uh, and that's basically what we're here to talk about tonight. Um, I'll give it back. I'm gonna be short and sweet, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. Inshallah, we have a good conversation tonight,
All right.
bi'idhnillah ta'ala.
And like you said, traditionally, historically, has always been three. The Hanabila. I'm glad you have put Hanabila first to make and didn't clarify what everybody else will want you to clarify using Fudullah Hanabila, the virtuous Hanabila, because what is meant by the virtuous Hanabila. You know what I'm saying? Make this thing clear. What is meant by Fudullah Hanabila? What is meant by the virtuous Hanabila?
Nah, that's a very good question. What is meant by it, and also what does one have to do in order to be from the Fudala al-Hanabila?
Uh,
That's something I don't hear a lot. That I've heard one Ashari Sheikh mentioned what he means by Fudala al-Hanabila, and it was a decent answer, but it wasn't anybody in America. So
mm,
you
mm,
know,
okay.
that's just something to think about.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Abdullah. And like you mentioned the Ashariya,
Mm,
and the Maturidiyya, and you
mm,
mentioned the four schools of fiqh, the four imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahimullah,
Radiallahu anhum. Nah,
radiyallahu anhu, rahimullah, and also Ahlus Sunnah do include those who tread the path of ilm ihsan,
nah.
tasawwuf, many of the sound turuq that their chain goes back to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam through the route of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Most of
Mm-hmm.
all of the turuq they go through Ali ibn Abi Talib, with an exception of the Naqshbandiyya, which
Mm,
also there's a bit of dispute about the Naqshbandiyya um, with Abu Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. He was put that in the sink. He was the great grandson of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he was
sallallahu alaihi
also the
wasallam.
great grandson of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. I'm doing it
Mm,
live. Go in the room. Go in the room. All right. He was also the great grandson of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu
nah.
anhu. Also, in regards to that, the he, you know what I'm saying, through him is where the Naqshbandi, their chain goes through Abu Bakr and it goes through Ali. All right. It goes through
Mm,
Ali as well. And that Ali ibn Abi Talib,
radiallahu
radiallahu anhu, is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave
sallallahu
him
alaihi
300 awras, 300 words. And
wasallam.
he did when he gave him these 300 words, it was obligatory for him to do these 300 words every day. Ali ibn Abi Talib anhu, he narrated this,
Radiallahu.
that the Prophet ﷺ gave him 300 words, and from this 300 words, it was spread out through all of the turuq. All of the turuq, they have portions of these 300 words, and that
Mm,
Ali ibn Abi Talib, Karamallahu wajh, he said that I did these words every day except for the days of the battle of Siffin. except for the days of Sifin. Is the only times he didn't do these awrads. And after that, he did
Allah.
these awrads until his martyrdom. You know, so I wanted to add that because a lot of times when we mention who's Ahlus Sunnah, when we get
Mm,
to Tasawwuf or Ilm Ihsan or Sufism,
mm,
I hate to use the term Sufism because it's a very laid back. I think it to be a very inappropriate term to describe Ilm Ihsan and Tasawwuf because
mm,
Tasawwuf is about character transformation. All right,
mm,
it's about character transformation and divine and realization of the divine, which is the loss of subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, it's a realization of a loss of subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I can't equate Sufism to that. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I say it's a weak a weak representation. However, to many Muslims, this is like the part of the boogeyman part of Islam. But this is from the Sunnah, though. This is from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You know what I'm saying? Part of the majority of most of the ulama that describe and give a definition of tasawwuf. It's about the character of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and following the Sharia, following what you that to follow the Sharia and to build your character. This is things you got to work on, and you have to learn the Sharia in order to follow it, and you have to learn the Sharia in order to practice it. So the one who is ahead of you in practicing the Sharia and exemplifying good character, he's ahead of you into soul. All right, so inshallah ta'ala, Amir Khalil, you want to chime in, or you want me to continue with the floor?
I'll jump in for a minute so you can get the kids settled and you can jump back in.
Yeah, let me handle
Cause
this, man.
I already know, I
Yeah,
already know how
it's
nephew and niecey gonna be.
it's starting up already.
We was at
All
the
right.
masjid earlier, so I already know. Mashallah. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. All right, so basically today
alaikum
what we
salam wa
wanted
rahmatullah.
to talk about, I mean I caught a couple minutes of it, uh, is we're talking about Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah. And it's the one thing that we don't have a problem, people don't have a problem with dealing with the four madhahibs. So just for our listeners, for those who are new to this, when with the Quran, it's clear in the Quran, Iman, Kufr, right? You can't mistake that. There's no mistaking that. It's after the death of the Prophet Sallallahu, there were people that from amongst the Muslims that started to arrive with uh, beliefs that were contrary to the Ahlus Sunnah, to the main body of the Muslims. And you're referred to, I believe it was Ibn Mas'ud who coined that term, right? Coined the term of Ahlus Sunnah wa Jama'ah, the people of the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, right? It's also known as AKA Sunni, right? It's Sunni,
Oh,
AKA Sunni.
oh,
And
Amir,
yes,
I was under the to my knowledge it was Ibn Abbas read it out
Ibn
and
Abbas, okay.
coined that term.
I know it was one of the Abdullahs. Okay, so thank you for correcting me. So that term is coined. So now what's happening is because we're talking about in the Western Hemisphere, the madhahibs are learning systems in order to preserve the deen. If you was looking at what is known as the faculties of what Islam came in the preservation faculties, the first faculty that's mentioned of is the preservation of deen, right? Preservation of deen. Now, because of uh us, and I'm talking about Western converts And this is, I think it's a problem all around the world, but we're just concerned and focus on what's here, right? And so what's happening is, and I think the lack of understanding is what's also leading to discord. So um the Sharia come to preserve that faculty of preserving the deen. And in order to preserve the deen, you know, it requires sciences. You have to, codify things according to a science, and you have versification, verification of, of these particular sciences, and so on and so forth. So, your sciences in each subject. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, we get the understanding of how the sciences of the deen, how they've been coined, is from the hadith that's been nicknamed or labeled the hadith of Jibril, right? And this is a hadith that's both in Bukhari and Muslim. Actually, it's a mutawatir hadith, right? Widespread hadith. And, this is where the Prophet ﷺ was questioned and asked, what is Islam? In one riwayah, another riwayah was asked, what is Iman first, right? What is uh, 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 Islam or is Iman? And then what is Ihsan, right? And so, quoting from Sheikh Uthman Fodio, Taqaddam Allah bi Rahmati Ameen, he mentions in his book called Umdatul Ulama, he said that the sciences which are versified, or verification for Iman, the science that's connected with Iman is your usuluddin, okay? Your the foundation of the deen, which is the belief, what is necessary for you to believe about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these things which are, known and which he mentions, in his books are things that are necessary, that are incumbent upon everyone, to know what a Muslim is known. And these attributes, names, attributes, and the things that are mentioned about the prophets, and those issues that are mentioned about the afterlife, they're known by necessity, out of the necessity in the Quran, right? And we'll discuss that just a little bit, about you know about Allah Ta'ala existing. Allah Ta'ala existed before time. Allah Ta'ala existing on after time. Allah Ta'ala doesn't resemble his creation. He's different from his creation. Allah Ta'ala being Ghani, he's independent. A makan, a place, or makhasis, the specification or given description. Allah Ta'ala is murid. He has determination. And so on and so forth. And we go into that, right? Then there's also some attributes that are mentioned as well, which is mentioned, and these attributes that we mentioned is mentioned in the Quran often, right? That we know that Allah Ta'ala is a basir, right? It's mentioned in the Quran over and over. Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Inna Allah ala basir al basir, and so on and so forth. So this is mentioned throughout the Quran. We know that Allah Ta'ala is hearing. We know that Allah Ta'ala is mutakallim, right? Allah Ta'ala has speech, and so on and so forth. But the thing is, what vindicates anthropomorphism is that we know that Allah is not like his creation, right? It goes back to mukhalaf lil hawadith, that he's different from creation. So this is the foundational thing. This has to be known by necessity. Now, within the sciences, before I go in a little bit, and where I'm gonna bring you on, and we're gonna have you in here, Abu Isa, doing your thing. So within the sciences, so this is known as the usul, right? The foundation. Then you have what the Shaykh also mentioned is Islam. This is from the Hadith of Jibril. This is from the Hadith of Jibril. And so the science that versify or verify the uh science or science connected to Islam is ilm sharia. Ilm sharia, or also it's also referred to as ilm fiqh, right? And then the third science is that he mentioned, from the hadith is mentioned as ihsan, right? Where the Prophet ﷺ was asked what is ihsan, he said that you worship Allah Ta'ala as though you see him, and if not, know that he sees you. Now, a true Muslim knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not resemble his creation, right? This is clear. Allah Ta'ala doesn't resemble his creation. So how is it that one is worshiping Allah Ta'ala as though he's here? This is why Aqeedah is important. And then also things are emphasized according to his order, according to his tartib, right? I'm trying to, make sure that things is clear and for our listening audience that may not be familiar with this, right? So the person that is worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as though they see him, meaning when you know that someone, that you're being watched, it's less likely that you'll do some kind of heinous behavior or crime or whatever the case is, right? So, that same energy that you're promoting, right? Or that same energy that you're saying, you don't want that individual that you esteem, have so much esteem for, to see you in that negative light. Then you put on your best performance, you put on your best behavior, right? And where it really all matters is not with creation, but more so with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if one is not strong in that, with that, with doing that, then know that Allah Ta'ala sees him, right? So this is what these are the words of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So the science that's connected to that is what they call, or what the Shehu referred to in Umdatul Ulama, is ilm haqiqah, right? And it's also known as the science of tasawwuf. Now, so we have our Iman, Islam, and Ihsan, right? So you have Iman, Usuluddin, you have Islam, Ilm Sharia or Ilm Fiqh, and you have Ilm Haqiqah, right? And so with Ilm Haqiqah, just to mention a little bit, because sometimes, Muhammad was mentioning, because of, and we're going to talk about them a little bit, because of our good friends, the Wahhabis, aka Salafiyah, they promoted that Sufism is something that's evil, right? Now you do within the science, within Sufism in its subject, you have what I call goofy Sufis, that they do things that the Prophet ﷺ didn't do, right? They had things, but this is where the poison is at. You talk about goofy Sufis, right? And but you don't make a separation. You just throw them all in the same pot. All Sufis is goofy, right? And that in itself is it's a lie, right? It has some truth in it, but it's still a lie, and it's exaggerated in order to promote their objective. Now, to move along in the sciences, within the sciences, you have the element of them being obligatory. They're fard, right? Obligatory. It's the Arabic term, fard in this case. And the obligation is of two types, because Islam is a communal deen. It's a communal way of life. I know we like to think that we can practice it back to Christianity. It's just about me and Jesus, me and Allah and Muhammad and nobody else. We can't do that. Matter of fact, if you go back Islamically, the only people act like that was the Arab, the Bedouin Arab. When he came in the masjid, made his 2 rakats and made dua, so Allah bless me and bless Muhammad and nobody else, right? So many of us, we think we can practice Islam without a Jamaah, right? In general, we don't need no other Muslims, we don't need nobody, it's just us, right? And this is where the other syndrome comes from, and you find a lot of Muslims now, and everything I'm speaking of, I'm speaking about the West. I don't know about what goes on overseas, but you find everybody backpedaling now, because at one point when people were coming into Islam afwajan, before there was a plethora of books, people didn't take the time out to teach people how to pray no more. It was, here, take this VHS tape. Y'all probably too young to remember VHS, right? Take this old VHS tape, watch this, and this is how you learn prayer. Many people learn that. Or the old, the old Salat book.
I got you.
All right. So the old Salat book, the one with the pictures where you make your wudu and stuff. And some people would learn how to make wudu, and when they wipe their head, they wipe the neck and don't even know why they wiping the neck, right? And then all of a sudden, here comes the Crusaders, following the desert Saudi men had, and wiping your neck is a bid'ah, and then this, that, and third, and everything, they started to become the pontificators, correcting everyone. Your deen is wrong because you didn't follow a hadith, and so on and so forth. So you had this whole smear campaign, right? And that's what it was, a campaign. However, you have two divisions, categories of obligation, obligatory, right? And this is on every Muslim. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the hadith, "Talib al-ilm faridatu ala kulli Muslim," right? That seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. Now, in the word, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't leave it to mean nacular, like indefinite, where you say, you know, I'm gonna buy a house, right? I'm gonna buy a house. That's not really specific. You're saying I'm gonna buy a house. You didn't give no details to it, right? But however, the Prophet ﷺ did what is known as ma'rifah. He was more specific in his ilm, right? This the knowledge. So, and what we understand from our scholars is talking about those knowledge that are incumbent upon you to know, right? So, which leads me to in another riwayah, it says Kuli Muslim or Kuli Muslimah, right? People want to be technical, Muslim man and Muslim female. If you want to be technical, right? In all fairness. But the one thing that's not emphasized on, but they play on it, is that you have the individual obligations, right? The individual obligations where you're responsible for knowing your belief system, right? What is necessary for you to know from amongst the belief system. And that's what we was talking about, the usuluddin. What is necessary for you to know about the prophets. And this is just on Aqidah alone, just the belief system. Tawheed, Aqidah, they're all used and it's synonymous. For you, what is necessary for you to believe about the prophets and messengers. That the prophets, they weren't liars, right? They conveyed the message, right? They had the ability of getting sick. They had the ability of buying and selling, marriage and divorce. So, there can't be no smear. And if you came from a Christian background and you ever read that Bible, the things they say about the prophets, I don't even know how they think paradise is theirs, right? They accuse some prophets of being people who committed incest and so. I mean, like they said a lot, They said a lot right in their Bible, right in that same Bible that all the Muslims couldn't get rid of when I first took Shahada. Muslims was heavy on that Bible, and the Bible is one of the holy scriptures, and, and they played on it because part of our Aqidah. In our Aqidah, when you talk about Iman, is tu'minu billahi, belief in Allah, or malaikatihi, or kutubihi, right? In the books, right? And so they didn't say the Injil or Torah, they said the Bible, right? And the Bible is a hodgepodge of all the books and some added things that King James put in there as well, right? So in the Bible, what is included in the Bible would have been was recognized as the Old Testament. Many of those books up to a certain point, I forgot where it stopped at, is recognized as the Torah, right? Then you had the Zabur of Dawood, right? Of David, the Psalms, right? We know that book of Psalms, and the 23rd Psalms is like the Fatiha for Muslims, 23rd Psalms for Christians. It's like how the Fatiha is for Muslims. It is interesting. But anyway, in the New Testament is attributed to Isa ibn Maryam as the Injil. So it's a hodgepodge, right? But anyway, so the belief system, and then also the afterlife, the samiyat, what is narrated to us from Allah and the Prophet ﷺ about the afterlife. See, these things you can't disagree with. You can't say, well, I don't believe that, right? Like I'll give you a small clips example for the listeners. And I know I'm saying a lot, but I promise you I'm about to stop talking, and man, I'm just trying to drive the point home, because everything after this point, I'm really just going to be talking, like Abu Isa do his thing and Muhammad going to jump in or whatever, and Saleh, whoever, but just give me this time, bear with me. So the semi-at, those things that were narrated to us from Allah, we wouldn't have no knowledge of any of this in reality, but no knowledge of these events without, it being known, coming to us by way of Allah Ta'ala, tell us by means of the Quran, or by the Prophet ﷺ by means of by means of his Hadith al-Sharif, right? Those narrations. Okay. So, I know many Muslims, there was a minhaj developed that was a minhaj, a methodology developed saying, hey, I don't need no Hadith. All I need is the Quran, right? Well, if you read the Quran enough, you know that you need the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, right? And that's a whole nother discussion in and of itself. But anyway, so these events of the afterlife, where you're dealing with the issues of the barzakh, what goes on in the grave. Muslims don't just believe you just put in the ground and that's it, and your body just turns to dust. No, we believe that what happens? Angels come and visit you, and they question you about your belief in this life. We believe that there's blessings in the grave, right? When you're saying blessings in the grave, when you'll see your spot in Jannah, right? You'll be laying there, literally, like a person, think about it. You were gonna have your big wedding the next day, tomorrow, right? And the only thing you keep thinking about, you about to marry one of the most beautiful women in the world. And the only thing you got to do is just wake up, right? The Maha is there. You got that 5K, them 5 bands together, right? You got the Walima, you know what I'm saying? Got a nice big banquet hall. You know, and invited everybody, and sent out invitations. You even got a limo for when y'all slide up out of there. You know what I'm saying? Yo, and this joint is just like nothing but bliss. You thinking about going to Bahamas or some little island or something like that with some white sand, where you can see your feet in the water, right? Only thing you got to do is just wake up. Right? Now, Allah Ta'ala tells us about paradise. The intensity of paradise is 70 times greater than anything we can imagine. So if you think that's something, it makes you, it makes you smile when you think of it like, man, all I got to do is, you know what I'm saying? I know y'all good brothers, if, we could all marry our wives over and over again, we all would, right? So imagine that, waking up and seeing your wife, right? And the only thing you got to do is just marry her. And that's, boom, that's it, right? Well, that blessing in the grave, that blessing in the grave, you'll see your spot in Jannah, right? These are known, and these are known by, how will we know this? By the Prophet Sallallahu, conveying this to us. So we know about that. We also know about the punishment in the grave. You have people that, where people are in the grave as of right now, real time, hakikatin, happening right now. You see? And so they're getting punished in the grave, right? And there's various punishments for various sins, different types of sins, right? Then we're also talking about where people go to the hellfires, right? And the hellfires will burn the skin, right? The skin will grow back and it'll burn again, and then you talk about the kutub, the books, you're giving your scrolls on the day of judgment, because we have two angels that accompany all of us from the time we become pubescent, right, until death. And everything we do and everything we say is written either for us or against us. Even idle speech, right? Even idle speech is written down and recorded, and it's not recorded as good is written against you. Then we also believe in about the wazn, the scale, right? If it's heavy on the right side, then that means you're a person of Jannah, Ashabul Yamin, the people of the right hand, right? That means the people of Jannah. If you're the people on the left hand, then that means that you'll spend some time in the fire. We also believe that, that the Muslims, if Muslims go to the fire, they will go to the fire for some time, but eventually they'll be interceded for and pulled out and admitted into paradise. Versus those who died upon disbelief, they will remain in the fire abadan, forever. They'll never get out, right? We also believe in the shifat, an intercession. Various types, but the grandest of all intercession is that of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And then we talk about paradise and its 8 levels or 7 levels, according to which riwayah you follow, and hellfire 7 level, 8 levels, and then also one of the things is one of the greatest of rewards is the ru'ya, where you have the ability as a reward that the believer will be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, you cannot put modality to it. You can't put description, because anything that the mind thinks of and conceives, that the only thing you don't think of is creation, right? Like, for instance, Ninja Turtles. That used to be one of my favorite cartoons when I was a kid. But who in the world thinks of a talking turtle that know karate and eat pizza? Right? So anything that you try to imagine, you're gonna put, nothing but a created being to it. Mr. Ed. Y'all that me. I know Muhammad know about Mr. Ed, the talking horse. Yeah, Wilbur.
Yeah,
Right? That used,
sure
that
do.
used to be my shot. All right. So these things are obligatory upon every individual to know about. Then you have from the Islam. Now you have the Salah incumbent upon you immediately. You have to learn about the Salah and its prerequisites, right? Well, Aqimus Salah is what the Prophet ﷺ said. Now, Sheikh Abdullahi Danfodio, the brother of Sheikh Uthman Danfodio, he mentioned in oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the book right now, but the name of it isn't important. He mentioned in one of his books on fiqh, where he was commenting, mentioning this hadith. He said, where the Prophet ﷺ said, wa aqimus salat, the word iqama, aqimus, establishment, he said what it includes is all of those things that are prerequisite in order to make the prayer valid, the obligations that are within the prayer, and wudu, right? I mean, and it's tahara, because that's a prerequisite of prayer. You know, the tahara, the covering of the clothing. You know, when I say tahara, I mean purification. You know, for those who are listening online, purification, right? You know, water, the types of water. If not, you have to know about ghusl. You have to know all of this stuff. You don't really have idle time once you become Muslim, right? You have to know about tayammum, when you can do it, when you can't do it. You have to know about a stinja, right? Muslims have different bathroom etiquettes than non-Muslims. We just can't go to the bathroom any old type of way. That's how specific Islam is, right? Can't wipe yourself. You wipe yourself with your right hand. You have to use your left hand, right? And it's funny because I'm in nursing school, and one of the we was in just yesterday. I was just reading one of the chapters. It mentioned culturally, right, and it was talking about when you're giving a patient a bath, right, and it says the nurse that is washing the patient that can't wash themselves, you have to be careful with Muslim patients, and you have to use your left hand to wash them because it was talking about cleaning, helping them clean themselves up after using the bathroom. You have to use your left hand and not your right hand because of their religious practice that they believe all dirty things is done with their left hand and all good things are done with the right. All right, I'm back. I think I got booted out for a second. But anyway, so in order for the validity of the prayer, right? These things are important. Then you have the fasting, which we're approaching the month of Ramadan. There's actions that are incumbent that you have to know that's obligatory for you to practice during Ramadan. Then there's actions that are sunnah, right? That you should know for the Ramadan. You should know these things. These things are important, right? uh the payment of zakat, these are obligatory, right? The making of hajj, right? And there's other practices that's included amongst those individual obligations, like buying and selling. You have to make money, right? You have to know how to buy and sell, right? If you're in the business, uh, you have to you have to know about marriage and divorce, right? Unfortunately, everybody think they're a marriage guru and they just like putting things together, reading the books of fiqh, not learning with people and making this hodgepodge of Frankenstein marriage, especially if it's somebody of interest and you want to do some backdoor shady stuff, sister, you don't even need no wakil, right? And we could defer the diary, right? And this is haram, the mixed Methhabs. I'm pretty sure, we'll get into that in the later time. In that case, you can't mix it like that. To basically where basically you could just practice, just basically you my woman, and I'm gonna tell my friends, and I'll give you something later, right? That takes you back to Jahiliyyah, especially the Jahiliyyah Arabs, because they used to take their wards' properties, right, and split it amongst themselves, hand a woman off for marriage for their son, and he takes a maher and he gives his he gives his son some of her property and leave her about a quarter of her property, right? So alhamdulillah, we move past that. But anyway, these things have to be known. These are individual obligations. And then when you're talking about the science of ihsan, or ilm haqiqa or tasawwuf, if you will, you have to know those sciences of those things that are blocking the heart. Because the true place of tawheed is the heart. How is it that you can recognize the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but if your heart is full of conceit and arrogance, right? What made Fir'aun the biggest kafir of all time? He thought he was just as good as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And his Aqidah was jacked up because he thought Allah was in a location. He tried to build a tower. He said, "Yo, build me the highest tower so I can see this Allah." Right? You get drunk off it. You get drunk off of your own, your own power, especially with leadership and things of that nature. And when you got resources, you get drunk off that power. A person when they be like, I can kill, I give life and cause death. Isn't that what Nimrud said? Bring me a prisoner here. Had him slaughtered. So this is the mindset. So when your heart, when you're full of yourself and you're arrogant, right? And I'm gonna show you how dangerous arrogance is. What was it that got Shaytan condemned to the hellfire? Other than the fact that he disobeyed Allah. What exactly got him condemned to the hellfire? Specifically, that Shaitan, he said, what? I'm not bowing down to Adam. Ana ahsan minhu. I'm better than him. That is an arrogant statement. And then after that, this joker accused the law of doing him wrong. Right? He accused the law of doing him wrong. So these sciences, and there's other traits that must be known about hasid, envy, hatred, bukhul, being stingy, and so on and so forth. These things block the heart from embracing. Now, these are the individual obligations. Okay. Now, what you have is what is known as the fard kifaya, okay? Those communal obligations that because we're supposed to be a community, so that means we're one, and not no generalization of community, like, oh, we're all part of the Ummah of Muhammad. Dudes don't even know you, never prayed a prayer with you. And this is always problematic because when people die, you see it the most when people die, right? Especially as an imam, when people die, especially from other communities, and hear their wife come and say, oh, well, he belonged to such and such masjid. And sometimes the people who's running the masjid, the administration, if you got those kind of communities that got a board and a president and all that stuff, they ain't even really familiar with the people that come to the masjid anyway. So they be like, well, we never seen them before, right? Then you got to jump through hoops with all this verification. So, but anyway, a communal obligation is those things with yes, this time I call them back. Those things that are um pertaining to communal obligations, meaning that an individual or individuals, okay, an individual or individuals, right, learn enough of that to relieve the community of the obligation. Because if no one knows it, then the whole community is responsible and at fault and considered sinful until someone is able to deal with that. So now, just to show you the difference between the two, an individual obligation is that a person is sinful. Okay, you're a sinful until you learn these individual obligations, and it take the burden of the responsibility off of you. Okay, so you have to learn those things. You have to learn your creed, you have to learn the prayer, fiqh, and so on and so forth. And remember what I said, that there's sciences. The sciences are derived from that in order to preserve that. The same way that everybody's familiar with tajweed, right? Even the most average person. Tajweed is a science in order for you to learn how to recite the Quran properly. That's how you preserve it. Now, with the Fard Kifaya as well, the same three things that we're talking about, Iman, Islam, and Ihsan, it's the same thing. With Iman, you're dealing with the theology or scholastic or the polemics. You know, some ulama use the word kalam. Some people are offended by the word kalam because kalam used to be used back in the day as something, especially for earlier heretical Muslim groups, as they say kalam, like, he bringing some strange speech. But later it developed and it was referred to, with regards to the science. So it wasn't always like a negative connotation. Okay. Now, so, but those science. Now, this is where Abu Isa is going to talk about this tonight, right? Within that science, the Fard Kifaya, right, where it gets into a bit more of details of dealing with things, right? Little more details and fine tuning, and it has to be a specialist to deal with this. Okay, a specialist has to deal with a person that took up that uh communal obligation to teach the people, right? To teach the people or be able to defend, right? Ilmul Kalam is that science of Tawheed that makes you better at defense. Because remember, we mentioned about the Kuliyat Sharia, right? The faculties, okay? And I'm almost at my point, and I promise you I'm gonna break off. So, you have, and within those sciences, you have Methhabs, right? Methhabs, and no, it don't mean just your opinion. You know, you have an opinion, and so on and so forth. Hold on one second, please. Hold on one second, please. One of y'all could jump in. I'll make my point when I come back.
All right, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. I didn't know he was going to be talking that long, long-winded. I'm short-winded. Basically, I wanted to touch on something that are you back, Shay? You
Yeah,
back? All right, go ahead.
yeah. All right, so you're closing up. I'm almost done because my wind is getting long. So anyway, so you have the Methhabs, those sciences that you learn from. Now, see the way that we utilize Methhabs today, it takes the seriousness out of it. It takes the sanctity out of it as well. We kind of like almost like Methhabs the same way that the same way we're in the masjid, you know, and this person loves the Eagles. I live in Philly, so everybody's an Eagles fanatic, right? Me, I'm from New York, so I like the Giants, right? This is the way we take on our Methhabs now. Yo, man, you see the Bengals, we're gonna do it again next year, right? Yo, you see the Eagles, we won, we just one quarterback away from winning the chip, and so on and so, and that's how people are doing it now. You know, like most people, a lot of people are Maliki, and they usually have certain characteristics when you follow a particular Methhab, right? If you Hanafi and you're praying, where do they usually place their hands at? Under the navel, right? So usually you can look at a person like, oh, he must be Hanafi, right? Then you got the person who is Maliki, he prays Subtle, right? And that's the extent of their Malikiism and their Hanafiism, right? That's it. And they out loud, if you yell Ameen out loud in the Salat, then they be like, he must be a Salafi. You hear that Ameen, right? So there's certain outward characteristics. You can't get around that. It's
Yeah.
stereotypes.
You know what I'm thinking about right now, right?
When you came and made Salat with us.
Man, man, that was one of the scariest moments of my life. That was so. I was like, Abby. Everybody was like,
Oh, subhanAllah. Abu used to talk about the first time he prayed with us, us Malikis. We dropped our hands to the side and he was screaming at me while everybody else said quietly. And we ended the salat in one top sleeve. He probably was like, yo, where the hell am I at? But anyway, so each madhab comes with a certain characteristic. All right. Now, as
Well, what the
far as
Shafii,
the
what the Shafis
soul,
come with? Since y'all got everything else to say, what the Shafis come with?
Shafi, I mean, y'all play it safe. Y'all play it
Oh,
safe.
we play it safe.
Yeah, because I know some Shafis pray with their hand near their belly button, and some of them up at the top of their chest. Y'all don't do the forearm joint, yo. You don't hug yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
But
hey, just to touch on the Shafi note, one of my brother-in-laws, he was Shafi, but he prayed subtle.
oh wow. Well, Shafis is
but
junior
but he, but
Malikis
he,
anyway.
he only prayed subtle because he grew up in a house praying
Well,
subtle.
Malikis.
My mother-in-law, my father-in-law was Maliki. so he prayed subtle. But all my sister-in-laws, they prayed cup because they was Shafi too.
Swallah. So with that being said, and then you got the science of the soul, and like I said, the overall when you're dealing with tasawwuf, when you start dealing with the communal obligations, that gets a little more specific, a little more detailed, but it's really fine tuning the heart, because once the heart is purified from those diseases that we spoke of, now you're more concerned about the redemptive traits and having that type of iman, which brings you, That the type of iman that you can only do the dhawq, what they call is a tasting, right? Everybody can taste the thing, but the taste isn't always the same to everyone, right? So, you have some people, their iman is so strong because of a thing that they experience, right? The next person may not feel that same way because of that experiencing. So, it gets to that. But back to these madahibs, right? So when you're getting into creed now, this has actually been pushed, and this is one of the things that I don't, and I'm gonna let Abu Isa get into that. I want you to see that there's no difference within the creed, and at least probably about the same amount with the madhahibs. At least 80%, 80 to 85% of everything is pretty much the same. That small number, but when you're focusing and you have a hidden agenda, you focus on the smaller nuances, which can cause fanaticism, right? Ta'assub. And a person will, well, I'm not messing with them because of this, not messing with them because of that. In today's modern fanaticism, when you're dealing with Aqidah, is we start to extract and exclude the group, the Hanbalis. I'm keep it a buck with you. You exclude the Hanabila. Now, there are Salafi Wahhabis that are claiming to be Hanabi, but they also claim to be Maliki too. And they also claim to be Shafi. So what we do, throw the baby out with the bathwater. We say, get rid of the entire Methhab. Oh, no, get rid of them, throw them away. Because, it's kind of like an insult of your intelligence as well. Because if you learn Creed, like you're supposed to. It doesn't even matter what, from what book. There's certain books that you learn. If you learn the creed of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah, it don't matter what you come with. You can call it don't matter what you call yourself. If you go against those principles that are set, some books there's about 100 and something principles, like 110, 104. Some are shorter, some are more summed up, summarized. And, if you go against those principles, that is not the belief of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah. You see? So now I'm gonna let my brother take over, and if you will, you can like you have mentioned the names of the three schools with Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and could you just more so give us a little more background of the of maybe Imam Ahmed and how he came at being Imam, not just the Imam that was followed in fiqh, but he was also followed in creed as well, you know, and that if you can give us the different, the show us the subtle, not the subtlety, the difference between that and the so-called Salafiyah, with that who also claim themselves. We have to be honest. The Salafiyah is a heretical sect, and they claim Sunni Islam and quote Sunni scholars in order to validify their deviancy in their belief. So, other than that, I'm about to step off and I'll chime in, or Muhammad or whoever, any questions or whatever, inshallah. You go ahead and do your thing, Sheikh.
Barakallahu fikum. Um, Bismillah. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما والحقنا بعبادك الصالحين. Alhamdulillah. Again, I'm Abu Isa Gurib. I'm a Hanbali in Creed and Fiqh. Uh, I just want a disclaimer. I'm not really a talker, so just bear with me. It's a lot of information. I got about one, two, three, four, five, about 5 books in front of me I could pull from right now. So just a lot of information. I'm not really a good talker, or I'm not gonna say good talker, a talker in general. So uh, it may get boring. If I get boring, just let me know, inshallah. All right, so a little background about Imam Ahmed. I'm pretty sure everybody listening has some sort of familiarity when it comes to Imam Ahmed. I mean, he was Imam Ahlus Sunnah, the Imam of Ahlus Sunnah. Uh, Imam Ahmed, he passed away in the year 241 Hijri. Before that, um, he was a great scholar in Baghdad. People came from all over to um, actually get fatwa from him, to learn hadith from him, to ask many questions. He took delegations. As a matter of fact, it's documented that a delegation came to him from Najd, and we know the Wahhabiyya to be the Najdi group. However, in the time of Imam Ahmad, radiallahu anhu, a group from Najd went to take in from Imam Ahmad, which that's the footprint of uh, n- the Hanabila in the Najd area. So it's not that when you hear Hanbali and you hear something about Saudi Arabia or you hear something about Najd, that area, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're Wahhabi or it comes from the Wahhabiyya. Remember, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, his father was a Hanbali scholar. His brother was a Hanbali scholar who refuted him. Right? So they were great Hanbali. They were strong. There was a strong Hanbali presence in that area already. Right? Um. All right. So Imam Ahmad, he took from many different ulama in his Musnad, which is, if I'm not mistaken, it's the biggest book or biggest collection of hadith written down and collected and put into uh, book form. Uh, from there, he narrated from over 280 scholars of his teachers, just what he narrated from in that one work, and that wasn't all the hadith that he knew. Furthermore, he memorized the entire Sunnah, 1,000,000 hadith. So that's who you're dealing with. You're not dealing with I ain't gonna name names, but you got some people, that they call the kibar al ulama,
Name them.
right?
We dropping names.
I mean, for instance, Al Albani. I mean, he apparently he going back and he correcting, you know, Sahih Bukhari, Sunan Abi Dawood, Sunan Ibn Majah, Sunan Al Nasa'i. Subhanallah, the muhaddith of our time. La ilaha illallah. Leave it there. But you dealing with Imam Ahmad is somebody that encompassed the Sunnah. Subhanallah. Radiallahu anhu. Um, some of his teachers, you got big names, right? Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Ibrahim ibn Sa'ad, Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, Qadi Abu Yusuf. You all know who Qadi Abu Yusuf is. Imam Shafi'i, Waqi', Abu Aliya, Ibn Mahdi, Abdul Razak, and many more that uh, the Sheikh Ibn Jawzi had mentioned, right? Many scholars. He started seeking knowledge around the age of 15. As you said, he memorized the entire Sunnah, right? Um, and Imam Ahmed, he took knowledge from Ahl al-Hadith, Ahl al-Ra'i, even Ahl al-Bayt, right? The students of Imam Abu Ja'far al-Sadiq took knowledge from them. So he took knowledge from all facets of Islam that was possible to take from in his time in his area, right? So of course, what you come out with is Al Imam Al Mubajjal. No, alhamdulillah. Um, okay, so in his time, the creed of Imam Ahmed was not his creed that he came up with on his own. He didn't come up with it on his own. What happened was this is the creed of the Muslims, the creed of Ahlus Sunnah, passed down from the Prophet ﷺ to the companions, from the companions to their students, from their students to their students, right? So by the time Imam Ahmed comes, this is the creed that the Muslim orthodoxy has been passing down, right? In his time, there was a lot of fitna. You had the Jahmiyyah, you had the Mu'tazila, you had all these different groups popping up, the Khawarij, the Shia, all these different groups popping up, and it needed to be the Imams need the ulama, the scholars, they needed to stand up and defend Islam against bid'ah. So Imam Ahmed was one of those scholars that did so. Many scholars at his time, they were killed for standing up for the Sunnah. Imam Ahmed, alhamdulillah, he didn't pass away, he wasn't killed, but he was tortured, he was imprisoned in what was called the Mihna. And because of this, many issues got clarified, such as was the Quran created? That's a big one, right? Uh, what is Iman? Does it include uh, action, statement, and belief in the heart? If you don't have action, does this negate your Iman? If a person comes with Iman in the heart and action, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligated to put him into Jannah, which is a Mu'tazili belief. Also, if you look at what the Salafi say, this is also the same thing they say. I'tizal, habibi. This is not Ahlus Sunnah. But, okay. So, um, as I said, this is the belief of the Salaf. This is not something Imam Ahmed came up with on his own. This is not something his students or the students of his students came up with and then attributed it to Imam Ahmed. No, this is what Imam Ahmed passed down. The madhab of Imam Ahmed is what Imam Ahmed said. If it is not something that he spoke about, then it is something that, based upon his principles, what his students or the students that came after him, uh, based upon his principles, is what the closest thing that they can get to that they would say. This is what he would have said. Um, what did he say? Okay. There's a statement that I want to read from now. When it comes to the creed, the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is where people want to throw the Hanabila out of Ahlus Sunnah. They want to say that the Hanabila, there are too many mujassima when it comes to the Hanabila. I want to read something that Imam Nawawi said. Just give me some time here, inshallah. Like I said, it might get boring. Just bear with me. Comment?
Supposed to be ready. Supposed to be
Huh?
ready. Supposed to be ready.
Ready
Supposed to
for
be
what?
ready.
I got it
Gonna
right
give you
here.
some time. Give you some
Nah,
time. You don't need no
I
time.
meant, hold on, wait. I meant be patient. That's what I meant. I got the book right here. I ain't worried about it. Alhamdulillah. Not seriously, but this is a statement from Imam Nawawi in his Sharh Sahih Muslim. He says, quote, you should know that the people of knowledge, when discussing the sifat of Allah and his names, or the names and attributes of Allah, they had two positions. The first of them is, he says, the vast majority of the Salaf, or all of them. Pay attention to what he said here. The vast majority of the Salaf, or all of them, held mainly that one is not to speak about their meaning. The meaning of what? The names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not to speak about their meaning, but to say it is compulsory to believe in them, affirm them, and that they have a meaning that is most befitting the majesty and honor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is also our clear creed that Allah ta'ala, there is no thing like him, and he subhanahu is not in need of a body, change. He does not move from one location to another, nor is he limited, such as in a direction or any of the other things possessed by the creations. This position, this is Imam Nawawi still speaking. He says, This position is also the statement of a group of theologians and the dominant one chosen by later day researchers from their ranks. End quote. This is a description of what's called tafweed. Tafweed al-ma'na, meaning, as he said, you don't know the meaning. This is the position of the Hanabila. It has been the position of the Salaf. It's been the position of the Muslims ever since the Prophet ﷺ received the Quran.
Real quick, Abu Isa. Two
Now,
things. One, you got a
mm,
question up there, and then number two, can you give them just a little, the listening audience, and for those who will come later to listen, so they know the difference. What is the
mm,
difference between the Salaf and a Salafiyah? Because they,
okay,
that's because when you're using Sullivan, that's why I said these guys are crafty. They like vampires, like
yeah,
Dracula. They bite you, you get a little bit of bite. Get one bite, you turn into a vampire too. So they
nah,
people need to understand the difference between that. Especially the
uh,
wordplay.
now, inshallah. So the Salaf, according to the majority of the Muslims, when we talk about the Salaf, what we're talking about is, they'll say, or you'll usually hear the definition of the first three generations. I'm gonna boil it down for you, and I'm gonna say the companions and those who followed them in righteousness. As the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, three generations. He said, the best of generations is my generation, and those who come after them, and those who come after them. Right. So let's just say, at for right now, because during those generations is when you have a lot of groups such as the Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazila, the Khawarij. They're not from the Salaf. They're not from the Salaf al-Salih. We're not talking about them. We're talking about those righteous people. So we're talking about, let's say, the companions. Then you have people like Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmed. You can call them the exception, and they're the Salaf as well. We call them Salaf. Um, Now, Salafiyya, this is a group that formed about 200 years ago. This is one of the sects of Islam, where the Prophet ﷺ said, Islam, my ummah will break into 73 sects. This is one of those sects. Okay, they're not from Ahlus Sunnah. This has to be understood. They're not from Ahlus Sunnah. Salafiyya, Salafis, and we're not talking about the lay people. The lay people, that's a whole completely different topic. We're talking about, in general, Salafiyya, Wahhabiyya, which is the same thing. They are not from Ahlus Sunnah, Ahlul Bid'ah. Obviously, if they're not from Ahlus Sunnah, they're going to be Ahlul Bid'ah, the people of innovation. So I don't care how many khutbas you done heard from them, you know, people of innovation, right? Talking about the Asha'ira, al-Maturidi. Look at Mujeeb, just popped on so I said it. Uh, they're not Ahlul Sunnah. Okay? Ahlul Sunnah are three in creed, four in fiqh. Uh, Hanabila, Asharis, Maturidis. In Aqidah, in fiqh, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali. Outside of this, this is not Ahlul Sunnah. Salafiyya, Wahhabiyya, not Ahlul Sunnah. Okay? Inshallah, is that clear?
Now,
They hitting you with
the
them questions,
this
that
just
boy
this
said.
one
They
thing
they
right here.
coming.
Okay.
Well,
Come on.
Abu Isa, you can answer that, but we're not gonna change the dean because these guys quote hadith.
Oh, they quote hadith over there? Okay,
Yeah,
mashallah.
well, they use that. That's how that was the introduction to Wahhabism. Like basically, there's 73 sects, all of them in the fire except one,
Yeah.
except that which me and my companions are on, and they
Yeah,
equate
yeah, yeah.
themselves with being on what the companions is on. So but we not gonna throw the baby out with the bathwater because that's almost
Nah.
like the same type of mentality. Say, well, we can't use Hanbalis because the Wahhabis claim to be Hanbali too. So the truth is going to smash them. Let's sit down and talk about
Exactly.
this. You'll
Now,
prove who's a real Henley and who's faking it.
and it's
So
very simple.
if you
I'm
want to
I'm
add to
I'm
that,
gonna
I'm
get
sorry,
to
jump
that.
in.
It's very simple to tell. Uh, All right, so look, there was a question that said, are names and attributes different? Yes. For instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of his names, Al-Ghafur, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Allah, right? Names. Attributes, you have different types of attributes, but attributes are, I don't like to use the word descriptions,
Qualities.
qualities, that's a good word, right? So you may say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the attribute of Rahmah. Linguistically, it means mercy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the attribute of, um, there's an attribute called Yed, right? So, yeah, they're different. Um, what's another question? But the Salafi Wahhabi use the same hadith. It's a hadith. Khalas. I don't care what they use. They use Islamic sources to do all their deviants. They use the Quran. You gonna throw that away too? You know? Um, yeah. So I mean, here's a big difference between the Hanabila and the Salafis. And then after this, we can go if y'all got any questions, inshallah ta'ala. The Hanabila will not tell you the meaning of an attribute of Allah. They do not understand the attributes of Allah according to the Arabic language. A Salafi will always tell you, well, Allah said yad. That means hand. Therefore, Allah has a hand. A'udhu billah. This is not the Hanbali way. If they say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said yad. Therefore, Allah has a yad. What does that mean? Allahu a'lam. I don't know. It's none of my business to know what it means. None of your business to know what it means. Believe in it, accept it, affirm it, move on. Is really just that simple. If you see someone telling you, well, the language says this, the language says that, it means this in the language, this is a Salafi. It's a very simple concept. Uh, for instance, if you look, uh, a Hanbali will deny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a body. It's kufr to say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a body. A Salafi would say, I don't know, it's not mentioned it's not mentioned such and such. Therefore, I can't deny or affirm that. The Hanabila will not do ta'weel. Naam, the Hanabila will not do ta'weel. It's haram. The problem is that the Salafis will also say ta'weel is haram, but they do ta'weel. And then ta'weel leads to tajsim, which is anthropomorphism. For instance, if you see someone saying, just like I have a hand, the clock has a hand. It's two different hands. And like that, Allah has a hand. This is tajsim. And that's a very big Salafi argument. You hear that a lot. You will not hear Hanbali giving some such nonsense like that.
Just to make a point real quick while you're talking.
Hmm.
These terms, if you're sitting there listening to these terms and you don't know what these terms are, that goes to show you that this discussion is over your level right now, right?
Mm.
Now, the reason why I'm saying that is not as an insult, but I'm also saying it because they took these arguments outside of his circle and put them in the hands of the everyday average person, meaning the person that just learns how to read the Quran, know they far iron, praying the masjid, work, and it causes disputation, argumentation on something that they're not even equipped for. That's why I mentioned about individual obligations and communal obligations. So we're having this discussion, hoping to deal with the issues that we're having here in the West of uh, people dividing based off of these arguments that were created by deviant sects. These are legitimate discussions. But the circle that they would be discussed in is people on equal playing fields, right? And they'll be able to establish the truth, from falsehood and so on and so forth. So I don't, I mean to interrupt,
But I just want to point that out.
No, definitely. It's this is what happened. You took, not you, but they took the Salafis. Let's be very clear about who we talking about. Salafis, Wahhabis, in their Friday Jumu'ah khutbas, they will give a talk about the attributes of Allah. Wallahi, this is a crime. This is a crime. You're talking about on the member. You're talking about Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has such and such, and it's haqiqatan. They don't even know what haqiqatan is. Wallahi, I've seen so many people say it's haqiqa, ala zahirihi, this and that. These t- terms are completely taken out of context. Completely taken out of context. You got people running around here with these terms in their head, on their tongues, and wallahi, akhi, it's disgusting, man. This is not for lay people. To give a khutbah for Jum'ah talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a hand, literally. It's not for lay people like that. But no, I'm gonna cut it short here. And if y'all have any questions, I want to follow up because, like I said, I'm you know what I mean. It's not my style to just ramble on. So, inshallah, ta'ala help me out. Give me some guidance on there, and I'll answer whatever questions y'all have. Inshallah, ta'ala.
Go ahead, brothers. Y'all on there?
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
Mujeeb, you want to ask some questions, man?
I'm writing them in my head now.
Right now. All right. All right. Well,
I'm
I
writing them
got,
in
I
my
got,
head
it.
now.
I got one question. I got one question. Um, like I seen one of the comments said that the Imam mentioned in the class that the Ashari and the Maturidiyya are inclusive with the Hanabila. All right. Now I don't know what is meant by that. Maybe the Imam was trying to say that they all in agreement, and you know what I'm saying, in the foundation. But the question I wanted to ask is because some people mention uh Sheikh Abdurrahman, Imam Abdurrahman Ibn al-Jawzi, right? And they tend to believe that his creed or his belief was in line with the Ashris, right? Now, if you know, if it's in line with the Ashris, then if he, you know, if what we call attributes, right?
Mm,
He didn't call yet an attribute of Allah, right? He didn't
absolutely
give
not.
yet.
He said that was
He didn't
tashbih.
give he didn't give wajh as an attribute of Allah. What is the
No,
difference between
no.
he called it idafat, right? So what
Mm,
is the difference between idafat and sifat?
okay. Bismillah. Salatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. An idafa in Arabic means a possession. So somebody accused me one time of trying to confuse the people with Arabic terms or Arabic words. So let's be clear. An idafa is a possession. I have a book. This is an idafa for me, right? This notebook is an idafa. Ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah, he was not an Ashari. His creed did not agree with the Ashari Methhab to the point where you can call him an Ashari. In no way, shape, or form. Actually, you can find where he actually talked harshly against that Shaira. Now, um,
No.
like you said, an idafa. An idafa is a possession. A sifa is a quality. As we said, you have sifat or qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's that. You have quality, which is translated as essence. You have qualities which are like action, qualities of action, and you have sifat or qualities of they're called khabariya, right? Which are like reports. These are things we know about from reports. Now Ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah, he said wajh, yad, um, the sifat al-khabariyah. These things that we hear about, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us things. He said these things were not sifat. If I'm not mistaken, according to the Ash'ari Methhab and Creed, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have a sifat called yad?
No,
Does he have a
no,
sifat called ayn?
no. He's a sifat.
So these are sifat. Ibn Jawzi said no. For you to call that a sifat, you have no evidence for it, and this is tashbih. He said an idafa, and it's a possession. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Baytullah, Naqatullah, the house of Allah, the camel of Allah, the slave of Allah, the book of Allah. This is what yad, wedge. That's what those things are. They're not sifat. I don't want to be long-winded. Is that
Okay.
answer?
All
Yeah, I
right.
believe
So,
so. That was
so
it.
someone. So for for the lay person,
Mm-hmm.
but for the lay person um that are not familiar with these terms or schools of thought in regards to schools of creed, what is the basic belief or the basics that the lay person should believe in order to be in order to be Muslim,
Mm,
right?
mm. So you asking what's the minimum in order to be
The
Muslim?
minimum that they must believe in order to be Muslim.
Nah. The minimum in order to be Muslim is that you believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, and you believe in the qadr, the good and the bad of it. In order to be Muslim, that's what you have to believe in.
What? All right.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to rephrase my questions. And what is the belief that is sufficient in applying judgment in this world's life, in this world, for the one that makes them Muslim?
Oh, you mean like how do we know somebody's a Muslim?
Yeah, that the judgments apply to them.
Nah.
Everything Islam applies to them. Everything is that's for them is
Hmm.
also for the Muslim, and this person
Nah.
will be considered to be Muslim.
One that they pronounce the Shahada and that they pray. You know, this is how you know. This is these are the clear signs. One, I mean, if you come into Shahada, if you take your Shahada, that's clear. Now, if a person isn't praying, how would you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know. Now, I mean, of course, well, that's something else. We can, that's the one thing that you leave that off, you can end up in kufr. Now, see, that's another thing about Salafis. A lot of them will say that somebody stopped praying, this person's a kafir. This Listen, you gotta go to a judge for that. If you ain't got no judge, if you ain't got a qadi in your area, that's something that you can't pronounce on somebody. That
That's
kufr,
what
they
I
gotta go
call
through a
making
thing.
mockery of Islam,
Mm,
because like you mentioned, they utilize the scholars, the Methhabs, like basketball and football teams, and so it's like, oh, you don't pray now. Usually when you hear that, they're usually
mm,
being hard and extreme on somebody else,
yeah.
right? Oh, the ulama said you a kafir if you ain't praying. But when they miss a prayer,
Yeah,
right,
that don't apply to them.
it's more like stuff a lot. You don't even know my situation. It's such and such, such and such. So
فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم
this is
أخي.
what I'm saying. This stuff is causing the problems within our ummah
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there's
yeah,
no. It's not imams, students, whatever you want to call, whatever the leader is. They're
yeah.
not setting things up where people are learning this. They're actually winding them up like toy soldiers, right? So, like, I just highlight this statement here, and it's good that the statement is saying that they're trying to they included the Hanabila in there, but to use descriptions such as like they're small, you need to be more educated about it. It's almost like saying like
Minuscule.
it's probably just better we just accept them. They're part of Ahlus Sunnah, Khalas. To say you need to be more education, it's only gearing the person for the understanding, but also gearing the person almost for an argument. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
And this
yeah.
is the thing. So, I understand. I get the point that's being made, but look how it's worded. We're not gonna throw the baby out with the bathwater. Mutazila, you know why? You know how the Mutazila they were one of the largest deviant groups. Almost all groups is derived from them. To be honest with you,
Mm,
you know what their source of their deviancy was? What they used as their source? The Quran.
mm-hmm.
They use the Quran to deviate. Right? They
Yeah,
don't believe in the ru'ya. Right? They use another ayat to
yeah,
refute it.
yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So, this is the thing, and I think what's happening is, and I think it's out of sincerity and want to protect people from Wahhabism. But I promise you, if you just learn whatever your text that people are learning from their teachers, whether it be Jawhar al-Tawheed, whether it be the Ibn Ashur, whether it be Tahawi, whatever book it is, and it's the Creed of Ahlus Sunnah, you won't have no problem. Even like the
No.
same thing, I think why some people thought that Ibn Jawzi was Ashri is because he refuted the Mujassima, right? And he's known to be from the Hanbali school. But Ahlus
Now,
Sunnah,
yeah, I'm
we
sorry.
all refute the Mujassima.
Right.
We all refute them. It's just that book that he wrote, Duff of Shabbat.
Yeah.
What was so extraordinary about it was that he used the narrations to refute them, and he
Mm,
pointed out how they were going rogue in their belief in the those particular narrations,
yeah.
giving description and
I mean,
making a law liking a law to creation.
what's
So I believe
amazing
that's
about
that's the
that?
only reason why. It's almost like you cool, you said the laws one, come on, you part of our gang. you know,
What's amazing about that
mashallah,
book, man?
it's
Uh,
just an oversight on behalf of some people.
yeah, that book, definitely Tashbih, uh, is if you read within the first couple pages, what you'll find out after the introduction, if it's not in the introduction itself, he says he mentions names. He says Qadi Abu Ya'la says da 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 da, and he says Wedge is a sifa. He has no evidence for this. This is what Ibn Jawzi says in the book. It's right there. He says Wedge is a sifa and he has no evidence for this. He says Yed is a sifa. He has no evidence for this. The people that are pushing this idea, did they read his books?
Mm.
They've been reading
Nah, probably
Arabic for
not.
how
This became
long,
popular
Akhi?
for book that's shooting Wahhabi.
They've been reading Arabic for how long? You want to push that? Did you read his books? That's a good question. He's from the Fudalat Hanabila, right? So if I go with his matter of fact, who followed him in that madhab from the Hanabila?
Mm.
And did the Salaf say anything like he said? Think about that. Anybody that's following these imams that's
I got,
talking
I
like
got,
this,
I
just
got,
think
I
about
got
that.
a question.
Yeah.
If he says that there's no evidence for Wajh or yet being a sifa,
Hmm.
what's the evidence that he used to support it being an idafat for Wajh
The
and
length,
yet being idafat?
the construction of it being Yadullah,
But if
Wajhullah.
but then it's not dealing with he's dealing with the science of language, not the science of of creed. Then
No,
so the science
no,
of is the science of language. The science of language is still separate from the science of creed.
no, طبعا. That's definitely. But this is why when the Hanabila deal with Ibn Jawzi, they deal with him as a great Imam, but as Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Qudama said, he said, he's a great Imam, I love him, and he praised him. Then he said, but I did not like what he said about Usuluddin.
It's a question. A statement says it was said in the Hanabila book. Y'all are quoting Ibn Taymiyyah. Don't know which book, but I can replay the class and find out.
No need to replay it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I know what they talking. The book they talking about too.
You're
Is
talking
it?
about Lumat al-I'tiqad.
It was an intiqad that in the
The
introduction.
Yeah, the sharh of now, okay, this is a sharh of a modern day scholar named Sheikh Faris ibn Falih al-Khazraji al-Hanbali, right? Al- Now, he wrote an explanation of Sheikh al-Islam ibn Qudama's book Lumat al-I'tiqad, which is actually the book that I'm reading currently. This book here. I don't know if you can see it because I know my light is bad. He
Yeah,
wrote he wrote an explanation of that book. In the introduction, um, he quotes Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, and he starts this quote with actually in this section, what he's talking about is the fact that a person can be Hanbali in Aqidah and Shafi in fiqh, Hanafi in fiqh, Maliki in fiqh. It's the creed of the Salaf. This is what this section is talking about, and it's not a thing where you have to be uh, um, it's not like it's not a club. It's not a it's not something exclusive to those Hanbalis in fiqh. This is what Ibn Taymiyyah was talking about here, and it's in the introduction. Now, this person that quoted this statement from the book and tried to say that they're using Ibn Taymiyyah's creed, it had nothing to do with creed itself. He was just
Let
stating
me ask
that
you this.
uh-huh.
I mean, cut you off. So if
No
Ibn
problem.
Taymiyyah did say that, does that change the creed though?
Not at all.
Does it change? Did he say,
Not at
yo,
all.
your belief is this, that, and the third? Ibn Taymiyyah said that the Amal of Medina is a proof. Should all Malikis throw away the Amal of Medina now? Just because he commented? And you have to remember, scholars when they're writing books or narrating their book and their student is recording it, they're talking to a captivated audience.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
just because he said it doesn't make it a crime in and of itself.
Nah.
But go ahead. I didn't mean
It's
to
amazing.
interrupt.
Nah, no problem. But this person, what he did was is actually he actually did what's called tadlis, which means being deceitful. He took a quote and he only quoted a small portion and he used this because of the name Ibn Taymiyyah. And that he said, well, they say Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. And he says, قد نص Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. He didn't translate that statement, but what that statement meant was Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah explicitly stated. And then the statement went on and it was talking about how Imam Ahmed, wasn't the one to start the Hanbali Aqidah. It was the creed of the Salaf. Uh, and he only clarified issues and became famous because of it. And the people that came after him called the creed the Hanbali creed because of his status and the fact that he made it apparent over the Ahlul Bidah. That's what that passage was about. So it had nothing to do with Aqidatul Hamawiyyah and the rest of this stuff. Read the actual book.
Uh,
Now,
for
Fadl.
for 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 our listeners, and followers. Can you clarify, does Ibn Taymiyyah represent the Hanabila in creed, the Hanbali Methhab in creed? Is he relied upon in creed in the Hanbali Methhab? Is he relied upon in fiqh, in Hanbali fiqh as well?
Tamam. So Ibn Taymiyyah in creed first. Is he relied upon in creed? No. Simply, no. What do I mean?
He's not relied upon in creed.
No.
Bottom line.
Bottom line, he's not relied upon in creed. Now, just to clarify this a little bit, if he said something that's in line with the madhab, they will quote him. You'll find the scholars that came after him quoting him in something that is in line with the madhab. However, you don't find him quoting what was outside of the madhab from his statements. When it comes to fiqh, he's one of the most important imams when it comes to fiqh. But he has a rank within the madhab. You can't take him outside of his rank. Before you get to Ibn Taymiyyah, the grandson, you have to go through Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi. You have to go through Majduddin Ibn Taymiyyah, which is his grandfather. Then you go to Ibn Muflih, or it's like 3 or 4 scholars that go before Ibn Taymiyyah, and Ibn Rajab would be before him, except he didn't actually write a book in fiqh.
Ibn Rajab.
Ibn Rajab, who was actually the student of Ibn Qayyim, who was the student of Ibn Taymiyyah, which, so many people have no problem with Ibn Rajab, but look at those two teachers right there. He learned from Ibn Taymiyyah and he praised Ibn Taymiyyah. Should he be thrown away as well?
Ibn Rajab, he did a lot of works on the big S word, right? A lot of Sufi work, a lot of tasawwuf work, a lot of books on purification, you know. But my question to you,
Ibn Qayyim did too.
Right. Now my question to you, Abu, what are the things that you can do to bring, not just you, but when I say you, I speak about the school in whole, right?
No.
That you can do, right, to push to put the creed in the forefront, right, and eliminate all the false claims that is going on with the school. What are some of the procedures that you should take, and how hard do you think you need to go?
I mean, honestly, not. How can I put this, man? I'm like, who am I? You know what I mean? I'm a Hanbali, but I don't put myself outside of my position. All I can really do is take the books of the Hanabila and put them out there so that people can know the difference, or not even know the difference, but know what the Hanbali creed is. This way, when somebody comes and they say something different, now listen, I'm not saying be Hanbali. This is a very important point. I'm not telling any to be Hanbali. Understand that. If you Ashari, be Ashari. If you Maturidi, be Maturidi. But understand what the Hanbali creed is, so that when someone says, "Oh, I'm Hanbali," and they say something that goes against Ahlus Sunnah, you know this is incorrect. Okay? So look, there's certain books that the Hanabila study from. There's a certain curriculum. Lumat al-I'tiqad is one of the books. Salafis use this book, but there's a certain way to understand it. I've already put out about 12 lessons from that book, 12 readings from that book. You can go there to get a proper understanding, a proper primary understanding of the Hanbali creed. How hard do I need to go? I don't know. I don't know exactly how to answer that question. I'm I mean, I'm not that big of
I think I got an idea.
Yeah.
How to,
but you on the ground. You on the
it's the same
ground.
way
You on the ground.
that you have the the what do you call it, the if you look at historically, Islamically, the madrasa is set up in order for preservation. This is why you learn the sciences, for
Mm-hmm.
preservation, and then you teach them to give clarity to the students. And so when the students teach, they preserve, and they're teaching the proper creed, the proper practice, and those things. We just have to teach. You're
No.
going to get pushback from any and everywhere, no matter what you teach, right? Okay, so what you mentioned, uh, 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 Ibn Taymiyyah, the scholar mentioned Ibn Taymiyyah in his comment to use a point. Salafis use Imam Nawawi. So what, we
Mm.
gonna burn Riyadh Salihin? They
Yeah.
quote from him all the time, and then
Mm.
they tell
Or the
their
40
people
hadith. Or the 40 hadith.
he was a person of hadith, but he has some issues in creed. That's what they
Yeah.
tell lay people.
Yeah.
So this idea, the only way that you're going to count it, and and this is the reality. This is for Black America. I can't speak for anyone else. But if we're going to tackle this thing called Salafism, Wahhabism, if we think we're going to like totally annihilate it, that joint here to stay, just like Corona. That joint is here
Mm.
to stay. Now, what
Mm.
you can do is continue to teach. Because one thing they don't have, it seemed like in the past they were teaching, but they don't really have like a real system. Their
Yeah.
system is those particular books, those particular books. And due to the fact that there was an absence of Ahlus Sunnah constantly teaching and spreading, the people begin to get pulled in. Then also, what else I've learned about the whole Wahhabi propagation, the whole thing with their propagation, is their books. They push their creed through their books, so you can remain whatever method you on, but as long as you embrace their creed, that's their thing.
Yeah.
That's their
Yeah.
thing, because they don't have commentaries of Quran, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every scholar they quote from a commentary of Quran is a Sunni scholar. They quote from Qurtubi, they quote from Tabarani, they quote from they I mean everybody, anybody you can think of, their sources. So you would think that they were Sunni, but as long as you embrace their creed, so you see modern day people that's embracing them, and they're pushing their creed. And also, another thing that's connected to their creed is money. So if you're a person that loves the dunya, you help with dunya, you'll be Wahhabi in the New York Minute, because there's money connected to it, right? Matter of fact, most Islamic groups today that have like an agenda, they offer you money. They'll offer you an envelope. Hey, you push this, or you read the Sheikh's books, we got more money where that come from. You see what I'm saying? So the thing is that we have to be organic boots on the ground, and just teach. And people got to begin to practice it. That's the other problem. A lot of Sunni Muslims, it's like we almost like philosophical when it comes to mu'amilat. We're philosophers. Well, I practice this, but I don't practice that. Well, I'll practice this because this shit, and I don't practice that. Well, they do the same thing with Aqidah. If we see these paths, these madhahibs or turuqs, if you want to use the word, as a path back to the sunnah, then we need to practice it and follow it. And if we're trying to gain some sort of station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't want to look for every ruksa concession. You want to look for the strictest opinion, right? To implement on yourself, right? And you want to avoid not the haram, you want to avoid the things that are makruh, to implement on yourself in order to establish your connection, that tight connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'll step back, inshallah. Go ahead, do your thing. And we on our final 15 minutes too. We gonna keep you up past your bedtime, all right?
MashaAllah. I just want to just further clarify between the Hanabila and the Salafis, but also I wanted to bring up something between uh the Asharis, Maturidis, and the Hanabila. Um, Earlier, somebody had commented. They said, what was it? The way he explained it, was we say Ashari and Maturidi, and that the noble Hanbali is included in that today, saying Hanbali creed may include the perverted and diluted Wahhabi who claim Hanabila. Now this is a paraphrasing of the statement of whoever this person is. Um, First of all, you can't say Ashari or Maturidi and then say that's including the Hanabila unless you say and the Hanabila. One, the Hanabila are not Asharis and they're not Maturidis, the Hanabila. Okay, this has to be understood properly. Uh, it's a whole completely different school. It has its own usul. Uh, it's its own madhab, right? Um, what? So there are some differences. They're very small differences. Um, and there are not many. This is what I mean. They're not many, right? So one, like we said, the ta'wil. What's ta'wil? To do detailed interpretation of the sifat or the attributes of Allah. This is haram in Hanbali madhab. If it's permissible in the Ashari and Maturidi's madhab, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the ruling? Is that correct? Permissible?
Repeat it one more time.
The top will is
Yeah.
permissible in the Ashri and the Maturidi method,
Hmm.
because and it's used in the Ashri and Maturidi method when refuting other deviant beliefs that go into touch scene, right? If they're gonna give meanings to something, then the meaning
Okay.
has to be a befitting meaning that is befitting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that does not associate Allah Ta'ala with any creation or having any likeness or resemblance to anything that's created.
Amen.
Negating likeness of resemblance of created things to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in the meaning and
Okay.
and the word, if they choose to use the word, like when they say yet it means hand, or what it means face, right? Then say if you're gonna give that a meaning, then it has to be from the befitting meaning. Also knowing that this is not the meaning, this is not the true meaning. This is
Mm.
a befitting meaning that could be possible,
It's a
a
possible
possible
meaning,
meaning.
but it's
Yeah,
not lazim. So it's not saying it means this.
it means this. It's saying this is
Mm.
a possible meaning, but this is not the meaning. Allah
Nah.
Ta'ala knows the true meaning.
Now
Yeah.
that's
And it could
interesting.
also mean this, and
Uh
we
huh.
followed up with it could also mean this as well, right? Is identifying majority, a massive amount of what is the possible meanings. Imam al-Bayhaqi,
No.
rahimahullah ta'ala, he spoke about in his book Ismatul
Rahimahullah.
Wasifat, is
Mm.
that, ta'wil is used once all the mutawatir and the hadith was drained out of all his last resources. Then we go to ta'wil. So it's like a last, what's the word I'm looking
No.
for? Like a last
Last
resort.
resort.
It's not the
Yeah.
first. It's not the
Now.
first thing we do, right? The
Yeah.
first thing we do is the foundation. And what's that? Tafweed.
We now see this is the position of the Hanabila. We stop there. Tafweed. What does it mean? Allahu Alam. And we say it's haram. We didn't say, the scholars of the Hanabila didn't say, if you do Tafweed, this is kufr. It can be, but it would have to be a certain type
Hey,
of Tafweed.
may I answer this question? May I answer this question here? He says ta'wil should still be from a befitting meaning that a scholar explains, not a layman. Right? The layman, we stop at what the scholars say. We don't put an interpretation on there that the scholars didn't put an interpretation on. If that makes sense with you. We
Right.
don't step the layman's, we don't step the boundaries when we're using ta'wil.
Yeah.
Like me myself, I can't say, oh, this means that. Who am I to say this is what this means?
No.
I don't have the
Now,
I don't have the
mm,
what you call to use. Go ahead.
no, I
But
just
I'm
want to
sorry,
say,
Abulisa.
now, this, the concept of Tawil. Now, understand something. Uh, Although Salafis say Ta'wil is haram, They do ta'weed. When they tell you Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما منعك أن تسجد لما خلقت بيدي. What prevented you from from prostrating to that which I created with my yaday? They will say yaday means
So
my two hands. What prevented you from prostrating to that which I created with my two hands? This is what they will tell you. Or they will say, الرحمن على أرش استوى. The most merciful has risen above his throne. Is how what they would say. This is ta'weed. This is ta'weed. And honestly, actually, if you look at it, it's actually, and they say that this is the meaning. And if you say it means anything else, then this is, uh, it's incorrect. It's bid'ah, they will call it. This is ta'weed, and they're
I
saying you have to have that. Huh?
would you say I kind of like, would you say that it's safe for the everyday Muslim? And I think that was also what was promoted from amongst the early community with the Saleh,
Mm,
that the approach with the Quran and these attributes uh, that have multiple meanings, especially meanings like, like yed can be translated as a hand and so on and so forth.
hmm.
That is the safest route, and it should be the approach of the everyday common person to just leave yed as yed.
Yes,
But the
definitely.
problem with us is, but the
Exactly.
problem with us
Exactly.
is we speak English,
Hmm.
and it would go against the principle if people were following Abu Hanifa and Fiqh Akbar, where he told the people in there. I forgot what point it is. I know it's in the latter towards the end of the text. He said that don't translate these words, and he mentioned the word yed, and I think
Mm,
his other word was wedge. He said don't
yeah,
translate them into the Farsi language,
yeah,
leave them, khalas.
yeah.
And I think that's was what it was, is the
I think he even
edeb,
mentioned Arabic in
edeb,
there
how to
too, didn't he?
approach it.
Yeah,
Yes, he said leave it, basically
yeah,
leave it in the Arabic,
he, yeah.
leave it. Then he
And
also
yeah,
earlier in that same text, he talked about the word yed. Was it yed? I think so. Yeah, it was yed. He said it doesn't mean absolutely power, nor does it mean absolutely mercy. So he's also, he exemplified the etiquette of approaching these things. But that latter point is the point that should be pushed amongst the general Muslims
nah,
together. And if it was something where it has some confusion, and this is where I know, at least with us,
yeah,
they would come, people would come and they would probably mention, give that ta'wil, that interpretation according to the earlier ulama. Or
yeah.
they may come to someone and say, hey, look, we don't even mess with it, we leave the meaning over to Allah. The everyday common person will be in obedience to Allah, because Allah said in the Quran, فَأَسْلُوا أَهْلِ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ
In
لَا
kuntum
تَعْلَمُونَ.
la
Ask the
ta'lamun.
people a reminder if you don't know,
Nah,
right? And what they're going to tell you, and I'm talking about, of course, we're talking about people from Ahlus Sunnah.
mm,
What they're going to tell you is they're either going to do one or two things. They're going to tell you Imam so and so said such and such, or they're going to tell you that we leave it Allahu Alam. Allah knows
no,
best.
no.
Where the fight and confusion is coming in at is one side is accusing the other side, right? You know that this is the position of the Hanbali, right?
Hey, can
That
you highlight
they
that
don't
last
do
comment there?
ta'wil. This
Highlight
one
that
here,
last comment. Yes,
this one. Yes,
yes.
recite, affirm, and lead the meaning to Allah. That is the adab of the Muslims generally, how you should approach the Quran, especially
Nah.
with things that you don't know. And you go and ask
Um,
those who know.
I wanted to mention something. Uh, and I'll leave it at this. When you speak about the attributes of Allah, remember that you're speaking about a branch of talking about when you speak about the attributes of Allah, this is a branch of talking about the essence of Allah. We don't know the reality of the essence. Therefore, there's no possible way we can understand or know the reality of the attributes. So let's remain quiet. As I can't see who said this, but recite, affirm, leave the meaning to Allah. As Amir
Yeah, it
Khalil
sounds like a
said,
good Facebook status, don't it?
hey, everybody copy and paste this. Man, post it.
Nah.
You know what I mean? But that's
Yeah, yeah. Don't
it.
forget to share
As
the video too. Don't forget to share. Share it to your
inshallah.
wall. Copy and paste this right here.
Nah.
Make it a Facebook status.
there's
Post that
there's
on your
there's a
wall.
statement. There's a statement. Matter of fact, take this and you can copy and paste this and make a status out of it as well. Tafsiruha qira'atuha. Its reading or its explanation is its reading. Tafsiruha qira'atuha. Its explanation is its reading. Meaning, read it and shut up. That's it. Don't talk about Allah unless you have a revelation for it. When we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're talking about something that we only get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have adab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who is more oppressive than the one who speaks about Allah without knowledge? Be careful, brothers and sisters, when we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see? So, um, it's its explanation is its reading. Leave the meaning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I shared the video. Excellent class. Uh, which class? I can't see who that is. MashaAllah.
I
We
believe
talking
that's
about
Sister Malika
oh,
that
barakallahu
that
That's
feek.
made
Sister
that
Malika
comment.
Muhammad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
I
Put some respect on her name. Give her her props.
She's in more classes than Ahmed and Jomo put together.
That's Allah. That's Allah.
oh, she said it too. That's why
So I
this is
guess
Malik, mashallah.
anything,
Alaikum
any
salam wa
closing
rahmatullahi wa
remarks,
barakatuh.
or it's
Um,
almost we are hitting our 2 hour mark.
I hope
I think
I just want
I've
to
got word
yeah.
that this discussion was very enlightening, and it's like giving a college course to a fifth grader. That's what they felt like. But they say they got benefit from it though. I just want to hit the books. But that is the thing, and this is why I tried to, as much as possible and brief as possible, without giving the darts within the basically an interview podcast. But this is why I mentioned this about individual obligation and communal obligation, Methhabs, and so on and so forth. Because the reason why the Ummah is being divided now is because things are being misplaced. They're giving information to a people generally that have not yet mastered their individual obligation.
You're going outside of
You see what I'm
Tarbiyah.
saying? And so,
Yeah.
yes, and it's bringing about argumentation to the point that you even have a third category of people. That third category is like, look, I ain't got time for all that. That stuff ain't even important. I
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah,
hear it.
yeah, yeah.
Now you even got people saying, well, I don't follow the Maliki sect, the Hanafi sect, the Hanbali sect,
Yeah.
and I'm
I'm
just Muslim.
Muslim.
These aren't sects of
Yeah.
Islam. These it's no different than what you have where you have American law, right? You have state law, you have Commonwealth law, you have federal law, you have what's the litigation,
Yeah.
commercial. You have the various
Yeah.
branches
Yeah.
of law, but overall they all use the Constitution. Hopefully that
Right.
helps to
Yeah, you
help
even got
people
constitutional law,
understand what
you
this
federal
got
law.
discussion
you
is
got
about.
constitutional law. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so, so to argue, to say that the Methhabs are causing a division, no, is that what you're doing is, one, you're taking the seriousness out of Islam, and two, you're dishonoring the sects by the way that they're doing these things. When you're talking about creed, when you're talking about the Methhabs of creed, this is in order to keep basically innovators away, heretics.
Yeah.
Like the man when he came to Imam Malik, he asked Imam Malik, "Kayfa istiwa?" Imam Malik kicked him out of the circle. He kicked him out. Like, yo, you get out of here. This guy's an innovator, right? They lucky it wasn't Umar ibn Khattab. You remember the man that came to ask about the ice that were with the shabby with it?
Oh
Umar said,
yeah,
"Yo, I
yeah. You talking
understand that."
about
He
Hold
beat
on,
him.
I
brother,
can't remember his
please.
name, but he hit him on the head.
And
He
he asked
said,
him, "Do you
take your hat
understand?
off.
Do you understand it now?" He said, "Yes, Amir al-Mu'mineen."
You cured me.
So,
You
so,
cured me. Yeah, talk about the mutashabi hat, huh?
so
Mm.
Hey,
yeah, exactly.
not only
So
that,
yes,
but
tough weed, having tough weed is definitely a place, and it is
You
something
know,
that is a place within the Asha'ira. You know,
yeah,
it's actually a position, and should be something that is promoted with the common people. And honestly, common people, the everyday person, sometimes they can't even get into Ta'wil. I mean, get into Ta'wil because they're like, man, I don't know. Whatever Allah said, that's what He meant. That's what
that's
most people will say.
tafweed.
yeah,
I mean,
that's what most
But
people
that's
say.
what I'm saying. That's the
yeah,
edda. That's the edda. Now, like I
yeah,
said, me, belonging to the Ashri, school of thought, Ta'wil is not a problem, but that's not for everybody. You see
right,
what I'm saying? It's not for
right.
everybody. Can't be running around here, using this phrase and then saying, "Oh, yed means this," or and then they're building a figure. Allah has two
Yeah,
right hands and a shin,
yeah, yeah,
and that's anthropomorphism.
yeah,
You see what I'm
yeah,
saying? They're doing
You
that's
don't
the
forget an
Mujassima
Izard.
work.
Don't
Oh
forget
well,
an
he's also in
Izard.
heaven and
Don't
on
forget
top
he
of the
has an
throne.
Izard as well.
You're starting to build. You're likening Allah to creation. So
yeah,
and people have to understand that, and they have to understand that, and you're not gonna make people stop being Mujassima by trying to extract the Hanbali school too. Like, oh, you got to be careful with, bruh. Deviance existed in all regions. Imam
yeah,
Bukhari,
yeah,
rahmatullahi alayhi.
Rahmatullah.
He had a
mhm,
fitna. There
yeah,
was nowhere he could
yeah,
go because you remember most deviant. That's the other thing too. The characteristics. If you read a lot of history of Ahlus Sunnah,
mhm,
deviants always had the government.
yeah,
Deviants
yeah,
always had the ear of the leader.
yeah.
There was nowhere that Imam Bukhari can go on the earth without someone questioning him. Do you believe the Quran is created? The man everywhere he went, he got exiled
To
because
the
he
point
answered it according to Ahlus Sunnah.
he asked Allah to take his soul, man.
He prayed for death. The man prayed for death. You see what I'm saying?
May
So,
Allah give him Jannah Firdaus.
yes, there's always going to be a deviant fractions. And this is why you learn the science of Kalam, right?
No,
You learn that because so you can battle with those deviants in order to correct the affairs of the belief of the believers that's been affected in that region with that. Not every region is going to be affected with Mujassima. They may be affected with something else. Mutazila, Shia, something,
mhm,
right? But the thing where we're
Huh?
leading people to believe that they have to know all of these
All right,
tenets
it's the
and all of
last
these points in order to
one you
have
got to
a
drink
sound
tonight.
creed.
All right,
The people are responsible for knowing what is exactly in the
no
Quran.
more,
The
no more
Quran
tonight.
is clear as day.
no,
Iman, kufr. Now you go to the specialist when you want to learn, when you got issues with the other, understanding some things in more detail. So I do believe for the everyday person, tafweed is where they should stop at.
no,
Tafweed is where they should stop at. And if you got a question, for aslu ahli dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun,
no.
then you refer to these people to get more clarity on the issue. And Allah knows
Well,
best. You got any closing statement, Sheikh, before we get out of here?
actually, I do have one for the Salafis. Actually, uh,
No.
listen, um, humble yourselves to the fact that the meaning of Allah's attributes is something that's a part of the knowledge that we don't have access to, and the
Mm.
Ummah has understood this from the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Humble yourself to understand that. Yeah, you have some statements that you can be interpreted to mean uh, understanding according to the language, but you will never find that consistently throughout the statements of the Salaf. Humble yourselves to submittance to the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that includes understanding that you will never understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm done. خلاص. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله وأتوب إليه.
Alhamdulillah. Saleh, got any closing remarks?
He dropped. No, I'm just shocked. Abu Issa just dropped the mic like that. You see him? He said, "And I'm done," and just dropped the mic and dipped off in the darkness.
He did a Rakim joint, right? He did a microphone fiend joint, blew it up. And when I'm done, now you can joke.
No,
Hey, I wanted to mention something that even in the Maliki school, and this was one of the points that from the usul of Imam Malik that I used to catch. I used to catch a lot of Malikis up that claim to be Athari and Maliki, but they would always reference the hadith that Imam Malik rejected. He forbade forbade people to narrate these hadith, and he's and the hadith that are related to the sifat Allah, that he rejected the use of them. He didn't reject the hadith. These are from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the reason why he forbade them is because it gives the person who's unlearned, puts them on the path to touch sin. Right?
So,
it puts them on that path. And that a lot of them I used to catch them up like this because they wasn't aware that Imam Malik said this. That's how I know that they didn't study certain books. Because like one of the books that this statement is in is narrated from Imam Ibn Abi Zayd Qarawani with his chain back to Imam Malik, where he rejected the narrations of these hadith. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times that
to the narration, not the hadith.
Not the hadith, to rejected them. Anyone
gotta
to
be clear for somebody
hadith,
come out and splice your statement up.
You know what I'm saying? You know, to narrate, you know what I'm saying, to transmit this hadith. You know what I mean? He didn't, you know what I'm saying, he the use of it, you know what I mean? He didn't reject the hadith. No. You know, so that's what I wanted to mention. And that just like the ayahs of Quran, these particular hadith, we believe in them as they was related from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we don't give an explanation to them, and we don't give a meaning to them, and we don't transmit them.
No.
Narrate them, inshallah. So that's the only thing I wanted to mention, and inshallah ta'ala we could close, man. Inshallah.
Barakallahu feekum for having me on.
Subhanakallahumma
Take us home with that dua.
Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati ma yasifun wa salamun ala mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والقاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق وهذه إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره مقدار العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now Jomo comes on at the end and we closing out.
Am I on? Am I on?
Yeah, you on, but you come in and we closing out, man.
Hey, y'all, please forgive me, but the Sheikh was in town at the Zawiya, and I couldn't break away from them. Plus, I know y'all got everything under control anyway.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, with everything under control. It went real good. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. We still live right now?
Yeah, we still live right now.
Okay.
Hey, since you on,
Uh-huh.
you can give us a few remarks before we close.
Give me something to give me a question. Give me something to say. I mean, I don't know what I don't know what I missed, but I can say something inshallah ta'ala. Uh is there anything a question anybody had or anything that I can talk about real quick?
Give me
Uh,
now. What's that question you memorized, Abu Isa? The one you said.
You talking about the sister's question. Uh she said the way the Imam explained it was we say Ashari and Maturidis, uh, and that the noble Hanabila are included in
Uh-huh.
that today, included in that. And today, saying the Hanbali creed may include the perverted and diluted Wahhabi who claim to be Hanabila.
Okay, so basically she's asking like what's our position on that? Is that what she's trying to
Yeah,
say?
yeah. I think she wants our position on that.
Well, I could say, well, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. The first thing I would say, number one, is for any person that's an Ashari or Maturidi, that's a student of knowledge, is before they make a decision or before they take a position about the Hanabila, that they should seek out a humbly sheikh to study from. That's the first thing. Before you make any judgment or listen to what anybody else has to say, seek out a humbly sheikh to study from. Right? And I say that from personal experience because throughout my years, I have mostly been Ashari, right? Because this is what my teachers were. This is what we studied, right? We always heard about the quote unquote noble Hanabila, but we never ever ran into one or ran into two or three. We only heard about them, right? And
Mysterious.
when I asked the question about the Hanabila, they swept them under the Ashari rug. Oh, they just Asharis, but come to find out, that's not the case because the Hanabila Shuyukh, they don't want to be called Ashari. They are humbly. We have our own tradition, we have our shuyukh, and we have our methodology in which the knowledge was transferred from the time of Imam Ahmed all the way up until now.
Mm.
So whether someone who is a quote unquote wobbler, let's say a wobbler, I don't want to call them Salafi or anything else. Let's just say wobbler, right? If they want to attach themselves to the Hanbali Methhab, let's look at what they saying. Is what they believe really what the Hanbali school is? And anybody that knows about the Madhahib knows that Madhahib, they have certain usul, they have certain furu that they go by. That's what makes it a Madhab, the
Mm.
usul and the furu. So if a person is a wobbler and they claim to be following Hanbali fiqh or whatever the case may be, but when you really check them out, what they saying or what they're doing is going against the Hanbali usul, then they're not Hanbali. Simple as that. And once we clarify that, there's no need to mention the Fudanal Hanabila. That statement was made by Taqiyuddin as-Subki, and he said it for a reason. It was directed in a direction. But nowadays, we don't have any discrepancy about who the Hanabila are. The Hanabila, the Shuyukh are well known. We've been publicizing them for about like 2 years now. We had one, and now we have about 3 or 4 now that we found. And at least 2 of them, as a matter of fact, 3 of them that we know about speak good English, very good English. So there's no reason to say food halal halal billah. No, no, no. This is, I mean, like I said, that was a term used by Imam Taqiyuddin al-Subki, and our shuyukh, they find it insulting. Actually, they find it insulting. So um so like I say, any person who is a Ashari or Maturidi and a student of knowledge, before you take a position, go research for yourself, because we have many, many statements from the Sheikh al-Azhar today, right now, saying who Ahlus Sunnah is.
Mm.
He said it clearly in more than one spot, and many other shuyukh from Azhar. And they are, Azhar is one of the oldest Sunni institutions of learning in the Muslim world. For a person that's Ashari or Maturidi, when you go to take knowledge nowadays as Ashari Maturidi, Azhar is one of those places you're going to get it from.
Mm.
And we have other than them who mention who Ahlus Sunnah really is. That they are the Ash'ira, Maturidiyya, and the Hanabila, or Ahlul Hadith wal Athar. Simple as that. If anybody else wants to make a claim, people make claims all the time. Does it make it true? You have to investigate what they're saying. So go and research on your own. Oh, and another thing too, don't be fooled by someone showing you something, reading part of a statement in Arabic. That's another thing I found too. People will read a part of a statement of a scholar or a book and show it to you in Arabic, and because the audience doesn't know Arabic, they'll think that the book is saying one thing, when come to find out the book is saying something totally different. So don't be fooled by that. And the people who doing that, they know what they doing, and they should fear Allah Ta'ala. I'm gonna be straight up with that, right?
Alhamdulillah.
Don't be fooled by that. Learn Arabic for yourself. Learn it as much as you can. Strengthen yourself. Take the time out. Learn Arabic for yourself so you can be able to do research for yourself. And last but not least, also stay away from disputation and argumentation, right? And develop a relationship with Allah Ta'ala. A lot of us, we spend too much time talking about these deep theological issues that really we should be learning them to strengthen ourselves and strengthen our families. We should be strengthening our conviction in Allah Ta'ala, right? But not to be using it as swords to try to cut other people down,
Nah.
or to try to break up the community. Because Allah Ta'ala, He says clearly in the Quran that to be a group and don't separate. La tafarraqu. La tafarraqu. So when you use a Methhab and you wear it on your sleeve, on your chest, and I'm Ashari, I'm Maturidi, or I'm Hanbali, and you're using it in a way that's dividing the community, this is not correct. And our forefathers, I don't think they would be happy with us with that if we keep on doing that.
Mm.
We should be spending time developing, learn how to read the Quran, memorize the Quran, recite it, and then last but not least, live it. Live it. They asked what was the character of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He was the walking Quran.
Mm.
Nah. So that's my input for the night. I apologize, for being late, but our shuyukh was in town and I felt like I just came out of a ghusl. We had a nice dhikr, mashallah. My heart feels really good. I'm excited. I'm glad that you brothers held it down. Alhamdulillah. May Allah Ta'ala reward you all.
Ameen.
And if there's anything
Ameen
else,
wa
if there's a
iyyak.
question, if there's any questions anybody else had that I can offer something, Bismillah.
Okay, well, inshallah, we well over our time, 2 hour time. So
Okay.
inshallah, we
Nah.
gonna already close with the dua. And inshallah, you know what I'm saying? Stay tuned next week. Don't forget to share the video. Don't forget to share the video to your walls, spread it around. Like our page,
Don't
Ahlus
forget to
Sunnah.
copy and paste that statement.
That statement, yeah.
What
Copy and
was
paste
it?
that statement. Make your Facebook status, and follow us on YouTube, Ahlus Sunnah. Like our page. So, inshallah ta'ala, everyone have a good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam to